Hey guys, so today we're going to answer a subscriber question, and the question in question was, Fredrik, how do you look at working as well with pair programming basically on a daily basis or a 40-hour work week, to have that as the default? So let's get into it. Now, when it comes to doing pair programming, let's first and foremost define pair programming. Guys, pair programming is the idea there where one or several developers, depending on your definition, might be called mob coding as well if there's more than 3 people, if we're going to be really semantic about it. But the idea is that you are more than one person looking at the same code and writing code together, if you will, in a collaborative fashion. So the way that I've actually been exposed to this, like pair programming is something that I've used quite a few times, and it's very, very effective. I've never worked in an environment where it was a rule where that has happened, but I do have a coworker who actually did this. And I've also been part of places of companies where mob coding was the practice. So the way that my coworker described working as part of a pair programming pair on a daily basis every day was that for her it was a little bit limiting. And I'm just going to raise my finger because I don't want to set a negative tone here. In her case, she was matched with an incompatible partner. She was a consultant at let's just call it a more conservative company, and let's just leave it at that. Now, the way she described it was that the reason why they were paired was because they were both of fairly junior profiles, and the idea from the company's perspective was that by doing this sort of pair programming, the quality of the code is going to be improved and they're going to be able to ship better software, if you will. But the issue that they had was that they didn't really match up as well as needed, because as she told it, her partner was fairly quite a bit more junior than she was, and even so she was fairly junior as well at this point in time. And they didn't really have the same level of interest in the work that they were doing. And I think that this is something that we should absolutely touch on when we even consider having, before I give you my take on this, because collaboration, as when you pair program, guys, what's going to dictate whether or not you're going to be effective? Well, from my perspective, there's 2 things that are going to dictate whether or not this is going to be a good idea. First and foremost, the number one thing that dictates if pair programming on a daily basis all the time is going to be effective is the people involved. Because if you have people who are either, in this case, mismatched, or you have people who don't enjoy the company, or people who are maybe a little bit on the shy side, or they do better by thinking for themselves or being by themselves. Because guys, there are plenty of people who can't really work as effectively or think about complicated problems when they have not somebody next to them. This doesn't make this idea bad, it's just that when you set this sort of structure up, you will at the very least need to have more money, because it's going to be more expensive, and you also need to be sure that the people doing it are compatible with each other. So team building and having a good social environment is even more important than anywhere else, because as I said, you will most likely limit someone, or the pair of the programmers, unless they can really collaborate with each other. And the same thing goes for mob coding, where you have, and mob coding in this scenario is just it's the same idea, but you have more people doing it. We come back to this idea of having a really good collaborative environment where people really enjoy socializing with each other and really enjoy working together. That's the number one reason why that's the hard requirement for this to happen. And as somebody who has been working in these fashions with not to this sort of extent where we do it for everything, I can tell you that that's where it all boils down. I mean, I have coworkers where working in this fashion makes me very productive and the code becomes better, and we find all these types of issues and insights, and I actually seek out coworkers quite often for the sort of questions where I used when I was more junior. And let's just say that these days I actually ask for a second opinion on more things than I used to do, because I've learned through experience about the sort of questions that arise when you work that you should actually get somebody else's way in on. Not because you can't solve it yourself, but rather because this is the sort of thing where you have to make a decision that is going to affect the code base, and it's always something that's most likely going to come back to you in a code review anyway. So you may as well just talk to somebody right off the bat to get a better direction before you go too far down that direction. So what I want you to think about, because there's no way for me to say whether or not this is a good or bad idea, all I can give you is that it will be a very costly way of working, and there is no guarantee that it will produce better software. The idea of pair programming is that you produce better software, but that as I said, that very much depends on the people who are engaging in the activity. Fundamentally, it's not going to produce better software unless you are certain that, number one, the people who are engaged in the activity are the sort of people who work well within a pair programming duo, that they can actually do well. And there are people who do very well in this, but there are also people who their work will suffer because of this. And the second thing is that you need to have people who are compatible with each other. They need to be the sort of people who work very, very well together. Unless this is the case, odds are that you will actually have code that suffers for this sort of exercise. But it can also be a really good thing to use it, especially when you have this environment and the features are quite tricky. Have a great day.